Okay, we should start then. Hi everybody. We're gonna play meeting from NZPEC parental alienation. Um, I'll be meeting with that. I'll be meeting with that lady tonight. So I'm just gonna play a video from the conference last year.
I'm proud to introduce our first speaker today, Dr. Elise Price-Tobler, who joins me here online. Elise, thank you for making the time to be part of this discussion. For those that haven't met Dr. Elise Price-Tobler before, she's a clinical psychotherapist, so PAC for registered, with 30 plus years experience in disabilities and specialised mental health. She has twin doctorates. I do not know where you get the time, Elise, but her first PhD is in adult survivors of severe level child psychological, physical, and sexual abuse. And your second PhD is specialised in mental health practitioners and the treatments used with adult survivors. Elise is also an academic child abuse researcher, expert, and author. I know you have authored a couple of books. Also, an adult child survivor of severe level parental alienation and abduction yourself. And I understand, Elise, you're currently writing the world's first treatment protocol for mental health practitioners working with clinically and adult survivors of psychological abuse. Elise, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Elise, if I can just jump straight into it. Elise, what is parental alienation? That's what we're talking about here today, but I'm really interested. What's your view of what is parental alienation?
Well, parental alienation, that
practitioners and the treatments used with adult survivors. Elise is also an academic child abuse researcher, expert, and author. I know you have authored a couple of books. Also, an adult child survivor of severe level parental alienation and abduction yourself. And I understand, Elise, you're currently writing the world's first treatment protocol for mental health practitioners working with clinically and adult survivors of psychological abuse. Elise, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Term is a term, it's a layperson's term, it's a euphemism that we use out with the general public. It's not a term that we use in clinical psychology. Clinical psychology, we use the term child psychological abuse and spousal abuse. So they're a little bit different, but parental alienation is the popular term. So we use both depending on who we're speaking to.
Okay. And what's your position on that child psychological abuse or parental alienation? Is it evidence based? Can people educate themselves in this? Where do we start?
Yeah, well, I think we need to go back a little bit to 1969 when, and I've just got to grab my glasses for a sec. In 1969, Governor Ronald Reagan of California made what he called one of the biggest mistakes of his political life. Seeking to eliminate the deception and conflict associated with the legal system of fault-based divorces, Reagan signed America's first no-fault divorce bill. The new law gave couples the go-ahead to pursue a divorce without proving any fault on either side, essentially gutting marriage and its legal power to bind together a husband and a wife. And it's estimated that if the United States of America had maintained their family levels of stability, much like in the 1960s, there would be approximately 70,000 fewer suicide attempts every year. So currently 3.8 million, and this was back in 2019, children were suspected of experiencing mild to moderate child psychological abuse, also known by lay people as parental alienation, by one of their parents in America. In addition, the divorce industry was estimated to be $50 billion, worth $50 billion annually in the US. That was in 2014. Now we've hit about $80 billion per year, which is what the high conflict divorce industry is making off high conflict divorce and families going through the systems. So we've just interestingly, it's just like they said that historic.
And that's exactly the problem here in Australia as well. So nobody wants to do anything about it because it's just so profitable. So there you have lawyers getting money out of it, judges getting money out of it, because it's just the courts are overwhelmed with the cases, allegations, accusations. Um, Police getting money out of it. They're getting more funding, therapists. There's big industry attached to this problem, which nobody wants to do anything about.
There's approximately 100,000 custody battles taking place in the US. That was in 2000. So can you imagine what the stats would be now? So we've got this is when this no fault divorce came in, a lot started to happen.
Wow, those numbers are staggering, and that, if I bring this back, that's a lot of children that are caught in the middle, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And the clinical definition of parental alienation at a clinical level, adult-child psychological abuse involves a child getting drawn into their parents' marital conflict by forming a coalition with the allied parent against the other parent. And this alliance leads to a breakdown in the child's relationship with the targeted parent. And usually that parent, we're looking at a pathology with a narcissistic or borderline parent using the child to manage their own anxiety stemming from the divorce, essentially reversing the parent-child roles to ease their own distress. So we've got a lot of pathology within the family court system, and we need a lot more psychoeducation to be going on out there with all the professionals who are trying to work in this really difficult, high conflict, and often violent space.
And I will just add, we also need to people be taking responsibility for their actions. So there's no false accusations, and there's no people taking advantage of the system.
Elise, you mentioned about pathology. Other guest speakers that we've had have used the word enmeshment or enmeshed. Could you help us understand what that means in relation to that pathology as well?
Yeah, so if I go back a little bit, I suppose an important aspect to understand about high conflict custody litigation from a clinical psychology perspective is a high conflict custody litigation indicates the presence of a high conflict personality pathology in a parent. So a no normal range parent puts their child through a high conflict custody battle in the family court because normal range parents have empathy for the child and they realize that the destructive impact that would have on the child. So they don't tend to end up in the family court system. So this pathology drives it into the family court system because there's a lot going on in there that's not understood. It's actually in the wrong system a lot of the time. That needs to, if we see this high conflict pathology, needs to be moved out into the mental health system. So it's very interesting Yeah, so that parent's usually absent of empathy, and we generally look at the narcissistic, borderline, or dark, or they often have a dark personality. So if the mere presence of high conflict custody litigation in the courts, that indicates either a narcissistic personality pathology, and that pathology is vulnerable to rejection, which the divorce creates as a narcissistic injury and a desire for revenge in a lot of the cases. So they're highly vengeful and they need to self-stabilize this personality. So they'll incorporate the child. It's what we call a regulatory object to counter the narrative with I'm not the rejected one, you are, and you rejected me. So they bring the child in to fill that wound. And it's a very complex space. And that's where we lead into the enmeshment. So enmeshment of a child, that's a pretty hard place to be for the children to be used as regulatory objects for parents. And yeah, it's a bit of a long kind of thing, the enmeshment, so I can speak to it if you want to, and
I think so, because there's a couple of questions already flowing in, and for everyone listening, please use the link in the chat or that you have access to there in the room in Newcastle. Please send your questions in because we will be addressing your questions, but there's a couple of comments about that enmeshment.